Services and Capital recipients. Thank you, Alicia, for hitting that button. This meeting will be recorded and then uploaded to our website so that if you need to, at some point, go back and look at what we went over today, you have that, as well as you can share it with others that you may be, or others that may be working on the CDBG program. So let's get started with roll call. What I'll do is I'll call your agency's name, and then you can unmute yourself and respond with your name to confirm attendance. And if there's multiple people attending on behalf of one agency, that's okay. We'd like to hear from all of you. So let's get started. I will go in alphabetical order. Alliance for Pharmaceutical Access.
They just joined. So APA.
Hello, who is representing Alliance for Pharmaceutical Access today?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi, this is Anel, and we have Rumicela and Nancy, both of our advocates, both on also. So we have 3 of us on.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Catholic
having us.
Charities. Oh, sure. Anybody from Catholic Charities? Okay, Child Abuse Listening Mediation.
Good morning. My name is Shelby McLean. I'm here representing CALM this morning.
Okay, thank you. And I see in the chat, Tracy Ramos is there for Catholic Charities. Great. I'm sorry, Alicia, did I cut you off?
Oh no, I was just gonna say that Tracy's in the chat. You covered it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. City of Santa Maria Public Works. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Com Unify. Anybody from Com Unify?
It looks like they're connecting to the audio.
Laura Sanders from Communify.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Community Action Partnership of San Luis Obispo County.
Hey, this is Jim with Community Action Partnership.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, Jim. Good morning. Domestic Violence Solutions.
Good morning. This is Leah Sullivan for Domestic Violence Solutions.
Good morning.
And Veronica Cubio.
Hi, Veronica. Family Service Agency, Santa Maria Valley Youth and Family Center.
There's several of us, but I'll start. I'm Steve Dallaire from Family Service Agency.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Maria. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
There's a bunch of us. Let's go ahead, Maria.
Hi, everyone. Maria Castro, Family Service Agency Program Manager. Nice to see you again.
Paul Catan, Director of Development, Family Service Agency. And I think Gladys, are you with us as well?
I am. I'm Gladys Ray. I'm with Family Service Agency as well.
Awesome. You guys like to have a good time. Just join the party. I like it. Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley.
Good morning, Wendy Robles with Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley. And I believe Thomas is on as well.
Hello, Thomas Miso, Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Food Bank of Santa Barbara County.
Good morning. This is Lauren Coiro from the Food Bank.
Hi, Lauren. All right, Good Samaritan Shelter, and this will be for two of the public services and the Capitol.
Hi, good morning. This is Hector Giron. Alexis and Jasmine are also on the line.
Wonderful, thank you. Independent Living Resource Center.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can hear me. I put in the chat that we're having some internet issues, so I'm on a hotspot right now. So I apologize if you cannot hear me. But my name is Jaden Gaines. I'm the Program Services Manager at the Independent Living Resource Center. Happy to be here this morning.
Thank you. We can hear you loud and clear. You sound great. Legal Aid Foundation for Fair Housing.
Hi, this is Jennifer Smith.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
Meals on Wheels, Santa Maria Valley.
Good morning. This is Colleen Sinclair. I'm the Director of Meals on Wheels.
Hi, Colleen.
Good morning.
Good morning. North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center.
Hi, Karen Powers with North County Rape Crisis, and Ann is here with me as well.
Good morning, everyone. Ann McCarty, North County Rape Crisis.
Good morning. And the Salvation Army. So I see a hand up. Representing the Salvation Army. Got you, Anna. Thank you. And I should add that if you do have audio problems or for whatever reason you're not able to unmute yourself or speak, that you can put in your information in the chat or also use the reactions tab in the Zoom and let us, alert us or let us know, just like Anna did. So I'm going to circle back to the two agencies that I called earlier. Maybe they trickled in while I was going through the list. City of Santa Maria Public Works. And Communify.
Hi, it's Kimber Lawrence. I'm on, and also Laura Saunders is on.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay. And yes, Catholic Charities, we got you. So no worries. We have you down. Okay. Moving on. So today's overview, and this is probably going to be a refresher for 99% of you, is just to go over what you can expect in the coming year as far as how to submit your request for payments and how to submit your quarterly update reports. And just to answer any questions, comments, concerns that you may have going into this new funding cycle. And also we're going to be joined by Lauren Silver, who is with Zoom Grants, and she is going to provide you with additional information as to how to navigate Zoom Grants, which again, most of you are familiar with, but it's always good to have a refresher. And for those who aren't familiar with it, this will be an excellent opportunity for you to learn how to navigate Zoom Grants. So again, we're going to go over the exhibits A, B, and C. We're going to go over the request for payments, and we're going to go over how to navigate Zoom Grants. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren Silver from Zoom Grants for a quick overview of how you can use Zoom Grants to make your administration of this grant easy, breezy, and and fun.
And stress-free. That's what we're always shooting for, is help
That's
make your
right.
jobs a little bit easier, because we recognize the great work that you're doing out there, and it's not always just managing grants. So we want to be as helpful as we can in your efforts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if I may.
Does it give you the ability to? I think I changed. Oh, cool.
Absolutely. And I have here just a quick cover page to show that we'll be covering what we call in Zoom Grants invoices and reports, but we recognize that you'll be referring to them as, instead of invoices, a request for payment. And what we call reports, or what Zoom Grants University may refer to as reports, you refer to as the Exhibit B. So just wanted to point that out, and so you're aware of that as we go through this tutorial. So first and foremost, want to make sure everybody knows how to access your Zoom Grants account. You should already know how to do that if you've been through the application process, of course, but the process for going in and accessing your approved award is the same as you would when you were working on the application. Just go to zoomgrants.com, log in, and just note that if it's been a while since you've been in there and you need to reset your password, you can do that using the forgot password link. Or you can give us a call or email questions@zoomgrants.com if you have any issues logging into your account. Next, you'll need to find your application. And so previously, you may have seen any applications on the left-hand side under your incomplete applications folder when you were still working on that application. Then you saw it probably move to that submitted applications folder. Once it was approved, you would see that application now on the right-hand side of your screen in the approved applications folder. And to now show you a couple things, I'm going to switch over into an actual demo account within Zoom Grants. So you can see that I'm logged in here as I Need a Grant, and she is in her Senior Assistance League programs or organizations account. And you can see all of those incomplete applications still maybe working on and are being submitted to other organizations. For example, if you submit applications to both San Luis Obispo County as well as the city of Santa Maria, you can manage both of those applications and approved awards within your own organization's Zoom Grants portal. So when you log in, you would either see maybe an invoice or a report, or in this case, you would see buttons that may allow you to go and quickly add an invoice or add a report to the correct program that you want to apply to. Once you're into that program, you could also just click within that title and then decide where you want to navigate from there. So in this preview link, this is what it may look like for you once you actually click into that program and you're ready to start submitting applications. And as you can see here, you're going to have a request for payment tab as well as an Exhibit B report. You can click into any one of them to also create an invoice here or create from that main page on your main applications list. You can also navigate next to that for the Reports tab. And just so you're aware, this Report Totals tab that you see over here to the right is a completely generated by Zoom Grants tab within your account. If you don't see these tabs for any reason, it may be that you haven't been notified by the administrator and you may want to contact them for help with that. Otherwise, you would see these row of tabs just below the main row of tabs that you completed with the initial application. Once you actually have entered into that application, there's a couple other things that you may want to do, and I want to be sure to go over before we dig into the actual process of submitting invoices or reports. One is that you may want to be sure to add collaborators to your application. So if, for example, you have need to add somebody to have access to not just the application, but somebody else on your team who processes invoices or financials or things like that, that might be somebody who would work on those requests for payments. And you may need to add them as a collaborator within that account. You also may need to add those who might need access as, for example, the reporting contact for the program. As we know, sometimes the person who's completing the application isn't always the same person who's completing those Exhibit Bs or submitting the request for payment. So now we're going to talk a little bit about submitting invoices. Sorry about that. When you click into either the main tab on your programs list, on your where you'll land on your homepage, or by clicking into that program and creating a new invoice, you'll do that within the financial tab within the account, which would also be called, in this case, as I should say, the request for payment. You can go in and edit new invoices or create new invoices or go back and edit existing invoices. And just be aware that if you open an invoice, be sure to close it out or don't work and try to edit two multiple invoices at once. Make sure that if you've created an invoice that you don't create a second invoice and start to edit it when you may be instead meant to just go back and edit an existing invoice. Once you've completed that invoice on the left-hand side, you would need to fill in an invoice number, a requested amount, as well as fill in all of the different fields that may have been requested within that invoice. And I'm actually going to take you now over to a sample invoice that we've created specifically for the CDBG FY22 program, which shows the instructions at the top. The basic structure of what you would need to complete by providing that invoice number and requested amount, the respective amounts that you may be requesting for each line item that is approved and contracted for your project or program. And also be sure to upload any documents down here below that are marked as required, meaning you have to have something uploaded here in order to be able to submit this invoice. Zoom Grants will not check to make sure that it is indeed the correct document. That's going to be up to you to make sure that it's not accidentally a picture of your dog or cat. So make sure that when you upload documents that you're uploading them, one, the correct documents that's being requested, or that you are also ensuring that you are uploading as many documents as may be necessary to suffice that request. You can see here that you also have a template that you can download in order to complete, sign, and then drop the original with wet signature back in the mail, as well as upload here. So once you've completed all of the fields of the invoice, you can then submit that invoice. You can see that it would be date stamped and time stamped at that top of that invoice. It would then show as a pending invoice in the administrator side for them to go in and look at and review that invoice and either approve that invoice or oftentimes return that applicant to the applicant if any edits are required. So next we're going to talk about submitting reports. So as I had mentioned before, you would go to your Exhibit B report table, which Zoom Grants just default title and our guidance refers to as report. And keep in mind that when you are going through each respective report, as I pointed out to you before, the report totals tab that's next to it is not something that you need to complete. It's a tab that is completely generated by Zoom Grants and essentially totals all of the information that you're inputting for each individual report, one or two, and compiling that information over time for both you and the administrator to refer to later. Once you're in that individual report tab, you would just want to go through and complete your questions, upload any requested documents that may be there. And while this seems like a very obvious next step, be sure that you click the submit button at the end of that report. The system will automatically save your work as you're going through and completing those fields. However, if you don't click the submit button, it's not going to actually push that report through to the administrator. So make sure that you push that final button. And if for some reason you had missed a question, it's going to pop up and say, for example, you missed question 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, this person missed all the questions. But then you can go back in, enter your question or answers to those questions that were missing an answer previously. Be sure to click that refresh button always and again to check your work and make sure that everything is as it should be before you then click that submit button again. So I'm going to now go over into the actual format of that report so that you can see and get a little sneak peek as to what those questions might look like and how you can then go into each one and answer simply question 1, pointing out also that question 2 is a branching question. So depending upon what type of category your project falls into, you'll have different questions that will follow. Essentially, if you were to select, for example, public services, Zoom Grants will take away the questions that don't apply based on your answer. be sure to then for that reason, always answer this question first. So you're not answering potentially questions that don't apply to your specific funded activity. As you're going through, note that you'll just need to provide one number for each one of these types of these fields. Zoom Grants will always provide a total at the bottom of these table style questions, as you see here. And these table style questions can actually perform a really handy trick on the back end, because while they're totaling each one for each question, these table style questions are also what will allow each applicant as well as the administrator to view those totals across each reporting period as well. So each table question is answered as here by report 1, report 2, and the applicant and administrator can go through and see what is the total served year to date. So you don't have to go back to the previous report and add that to report 2 to produce a total. We do all of that math here for you. So just take in mind that you'll only have to enter data into the Exhibit B report, not into this Exhibit B report totals. So I think that wraps up about as much as I can cover about the subrecipient experience and how to go through and complete reports within your account. Again, if you want to know the quick and fast way is to go in, find your approved applications list within your applicant account and click add an invoice to go straight there and create that invoice and complete it, or add a report if you wanted to do so, or you can just click in within your account and find those respective tabs here to complete that information within. Do we have any questions? Anything else I can cover today? Any other questions I can address, or hearing none? Well, the questions usually come later as well. So if you have questions that you want to share with the administrators that they can send to me, we're happy to do that. Or you can always contact us by going to Zoom Grants University and clicking help right here and sending a quick ticket. You can also go into Zoom Grants University to search for a quick key term. So if you heard something that I talked about today and you want to learn more about that, you can search with a keyword. You can also scroll down here and find a list of commonly found articles and resources specifically for applicants / subrecipients as you are now. And also just go within the college within Zoom Grants University that we have specifically for applicants. If you just want to read up on all of the different topics that we may have, for example, how to check your application status or other common things that we see during the application phase. But as you scroll down further, it covers other information or questions that you may have or that come up. You can also just review basic topics such as managing applications, which really talks about some of those main topics, as well as how to submit invoices and reports.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for your time and for that overview.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. And I can stay on the line for a little bit longer, but if you're gonna, for questions, but if you're gonna dig into the main component, I might duck out to go help some other folks if I can, but please let me know if anyone needs anything or has questions. We love hearing from our applicants. When you do have questions that come up, we know how important it is, the work that you do, and we want to be able to support you in that however we can. So let us know how we can help.
Thank you, Lauren. And yeah, I know you're really busy, so if you have to leave and miss all the fun, that's fine. No hard feelings, but thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for your time. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Okay, moving forward through the rest of our workshop. So the contracts that you will be receiving include a section where you will be told what your public liability and workers' compensation insurance needs to be, as well as this, what you will also include when you return that contract to us is a statement of work, budget, schedule, and performance measures, which is what we call our Exhibit A. And basically the Exhibit A is, this is what you're going to do. And then it's also going to require you, the contract will require you to do quarterly reports, which we call Exhibit B, and that you will submit in Zoom grants. And then also you will submit an Exhibit C once the entire CDBG funding has been expended and the program that's being funded is coming to an end. You will submit the Exhibit C, and it's basically what you did do. So the Exhibit A is what you are going to do. The Exhibit C is what you did. Your payment process, as Lauren just explained, you will go through that in Zoom grants. Also, the contract includes audit requirements and an amendment clause if there are amendments to that contract. The contracts are ready to go. You can pick up the contracts anytime, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. If you do not pick up, I am so sorry. Phone keeps ringing. If you do not pick up the contracts by June 23rd, we will mail it out to the address that's in Zoom grants. And the deadline to return your signed contracts is Thursday, July 7th. And that is because then we will execute that contract by sending it to our city manager for final approval and signature. And then we will mail you back one original version of this contract. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide, please. Oh, one more thing, I apologize. If you are planning on picking up your contracts before Thursday, June 23rd, Monday through Thursday between 8 and 5, just it would not be a bad idea to call extension 2118. That is our special projects group line, and that is because of the staffing we have, the small staff we have. Sometimes we have to step out and somebody may not be here. So just to make sure that when you we pop on over that somebody is here, you might want to call ahead of time. So that's the city phone number 805-925-0951, and our extension is 2118. Okay, next slide. So this is just for capital projects. The city will conduct a pre-construction meeting with the subrecipient and the contractor prior to the project start date, which will cover the following topics. This includes federal labor standards, wage rate determination, certified payroll, Section 3, Department of Industrial Relations number, interviews with employees at construction sites, and proper documentation in project files. Don't be alarmed, it sounds like a lot, but it's routine, and most contractors in the area are aware of this, as well as most of the subrecipients who are receiving our capital funds. This does not apply to our minor home repair programs because minor home repair is slightly different, has slightly different requirements than all the other capital projects. Do not start the project until a pre-construction meeting has occurred and an executed contract has been filed. Next slide, please. So as I stated a few slides ago, the overview of the contract exhibits include A, B, and C. A is your statement of work. It's what you're planning on doing. It includes the budget and scope of work, and then also your projected number of people that will be served by this CDBG funded project. moving on to Exhibit C, that's a summary of accomplishments. It's literally the same format, version, same questions, but it's basically what you did. So it's wrapping it all up. In between the Exhibit A, which you submit at the beginning of the contract period, and Exhibit C at the end of the contract period, then you have Exhibit B, and those are quarterly reports. And that's just basically summarizing the number of people that have been served during that quarter under the CDBG funded program or activity. Any questions on this? I'm quickly going over it because, like I said, most of you have been there, done that. And I think most of you also do a wonderful job of filling this out and being accurate about it. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I can definitely go into it a little further if anybody needs additional clarification. Okay. If you have any questions along the way or after this training, please feel free to give us a call. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what the Exhibit A looks like. So as you can see, we ask you, will the agency be serving people or households? How many people or households will be served with only CDBG funds? How many people or households will be served overall by the Santa Maria program? Here is the best part. You've actually already done this. You've actually already filled out basically the first part of your Exhibit A. And the reason I say this is because we had to get this information ahead of time from you in order for us to submit our action plan to HUD within a timely fashion. So if you may recall, about a month ago, maybe even just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we sent you a spreadsheet that had a breakdown of your agency and then how many people would be served, not just by the CDBG portion of the funding, but overall by the entire program. So we will go ahead after this training is over. We will go ahead and send that to you just so you have it at the top of your email list. But it's already there. So whatever is in there is what should be put into this first section of the Exhibit A so that it's consistent, because those are the numbers we reported to HUD. And those are also numbers that should be accurate when you submit your Exhibit C, what you did do. Obviously, throughout the year, you might end up serving a few more, you might end up serving a few less because the Exhibit A does show the projected amount, but overall, it should be somewhat similar or close to what you're putting in your Exhibit A. So any questions on the Exhibit A portion? No. So this is the first half of the Exhibit A. The next slide has the second part of the Exhibit A, and that is your budget. Again, your budget is information that should also already be done because you put it into Zoom grants when you submitted your application. If there are any changes since you submitted your application, if you, for example, said you were going to do 100% to direct assistance to individuals, but then now you're wanting to do 95%, 5%, let us know and we can discuss it. But overall, it should be what you said you were going to do in your application. Any questions?
I just wanted to add that also the budget that you're going to use on the Exhibit A will also be the same line items that you'll be using for your request for payment form, and we'll go over that in a few slides. So, but I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. That's a really, really good point. Yes, this section here that where you see that table, that should be, when you submit your request for payment, should be exactly the same as far as what line items you're funding when you submit your request for payment. Next slide, please.
And also there's a separate template for capital projects. It's slightly different, but I'll provide both in the follow-up email. And then they'll be uploaded to our website as well. That's all.
Yes, and in the chat, I am actually going to put in, you can find all of this information, including forms and all of our trainings. That will all be in our special projects page, which I just put in the chat. And then you can go on there and then
I was just going to add that it hasn't been updated because we're just transitioning from the end of the fiscal year to the new. So I'll send out an email once it's fully updated. So
yeah, that's a really good point. We leave it up there till the end of the fiscal year, just because obviously some of our agencies are still trying to access it for the current fiscal year and all of their reporting needs. So that's why we leave it up until the end of the fiscal. But that site doesn't change. That always has the latest and greatest. Just keep, like Alicia said, keep in mind that the new forms will not be uploaded until July when the fiscal year begins. But what you'll do is you'll go to that page, cityofsantamaria.org/special projects. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see different tabs. The one you'll want to go to is the CDBG tab. And so on your screen, you'll see the Exhibit B quarterly report schedule. And this is also in the first page of your contract. And so they're due 30 days after the end of that quarter. So for quarter 1, July 1st through September 30th, it's due October 30th. The second quarter is due January 30th. The only one that's due slightly before the 30 days after the quarter is the last report. That one is due June 14th, 2023. So that one's due 2 weeks early. And the reason is because we also have to do all of our closeout by the end of that fiscal year. And that gives us a couple of weeks to be able to do that. So please plan accordingly. And this also goes for the request for payment. The request for payment will be due. Your last request for payment cannot be submitted any later than June 14th of 2023. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. So when you submit your Exhibit B, again, you will do that in Zoom Grants, and it's as Lauren explained, it's pretty user-friendly and pretty intuitive. Here you can see the income limits. So when you submit your information, the reason we need to know what income bracket they fall in is because at least 51% of the clients that are being served with our CDBG funding must be low to moderate income. It's never an issue. We've never had an issue with that. The majority, if not all, of the clients served by all of our programs are low to moderate. So I'm not concerned about this, but I wanted to make sure that we go over it. Next slide, please. Also in the Exhibit B, we do ask for race and ethnicity, and that again is for reporting purposes. We are required to report all of this to HUD. And this is what they perceive themselves as, not necessarily what is. So when they fill out that client intake form that is provided to them, that collects all of this information, they will, whatever they put on there, they self-certify is what should be reported back to us. Next slide, please. So there are some groups that regardless of income, they automatically qualify. And the list you can see are they're called presumed benefit groups. So that includes abused children, victims of intimate partner violence, the elderly, which is 62 and above under HUD's guidelines, severely disabled adults, homeless persons, illiterate adults, persons living with AIDS, and migrant farm workers. So in those instances, while you are not required to obtain their income information, it is a good practice, especially if you have other funding sources where they're not considered presumed benefit. The presumed benefit is strictly a CDBG related thing, but it's not required, but it is a best practice, and we would greatly appreciate that information. Any questions on that? Okay, next slide, please. So I just referred to the client intake form. The client intake form is something that our office developed so that it would be easy for you, the agency, to collect that information that you will submit back to us in that Exhibit B. And so on your screen, you see that client intake form, and we do have it in Spanish as well. And again, this can all be found on our special projects website. And if they fill this out, you will have everything you need to report back to us. So you can definitely use, if you have one that your agency created that you find to be useful or just easier to navigate through, that's fine, totally okay, as long as you're collecting that information. Next slide, please. So again, this is just for capital projects. So capital projects are slightly different because their work timeline is sometimes very different than the public service side where there's an actual program. So for capital projects, you will only submit one Exhibit B that I just mentioned at the very, very end of that project. What you will submit on a quarterly basis is this Exhibit B, which is for capital project quarterly progress report. And this is just a progress report to let us know how the project is going. And again, this is just for capital projects because capital projects operate slightly differently. Again, this does not apply to minor home repair programs. Our minor home repair programs operate more like a public service. Even though they're funded out of capital, they operate more like a public service. So therefore, the minor home repair will submit a quarter of the Exhibit B quarterly updates like we just went over. This one is just for the ones that are doing actual capital improvements. This year, that would be Good Samaritan and our ADA improvement project. Any questions?
The minor home repair program will actually have its own separate form. So it's the same form, but slightly different questions that are asked of it.
You're right. And you know what? It says right up here, minor home repair programs use another form. Thank you for the clarification, Alicia.
No problem.
Next slide, please. So again, this is the Exhibit C, and you're going to say, wow, it looks a lot like the Exhibit A. That's because it literally is exactly like the Exhibit A, except for, again, you're just telling us what you did. So that's really the only difference. Is the Exhibit A is here's what we're doing, Exhibit C is here's what we did. But the actual things that you're reporting on are the same. The actual items, the numbers, all of that will be the same in the sense of it's the same questions, you might get a slightly different response. So for example, you might have gone in thinking you were going to serve 20 people and you ended up serving 18, or you ended up serving 22. That's okay. It's when there's a big difference, like you said you were going to serve 20 and you ended up serving 100, that maybe further explanation is needed. But otherwise, we tried to, again, make it as easy as possible for you to be able to report back to us the information we need so that we can report all of this to HUD. Next slide, please. And this is the second page of that Exhibit C, which again is exactly like the exhibit A, the second page of the Exhibit A. But again, this is just what you did.
And then I
Next
would just
slide,
add
please.
that under outcome measures, if you did, like if you didn't meet your goal, like by a few numbers, or if you greatly exceeded it, just explain it where it says, did the agency meet goal proposals at the start of the fiscal year? Just so we have that explanation for HUD. That's it.
Thank you. So a recap of the reporting requirements. And again, I apologize if we sound like a broken record about this, but it's super important because we don't ask you to submit anything that we don't use to submit back to HUD. And what we ask you for are things that we are required to submit back to HUD. So a big thing is consistency and accuracy. And we strive to do that every step of the way. So just definitely want to emphasize that your proposed numbers should be pretty close to your actual numbers. And again, if there is something where your proposed numbers and your actual numbers, so what you started with and what you ended with is way off, then we will need explanation on that as to why. And it's okay if that happens, in the sense of we just need to explain the why to HUD, because HUD's going to look at what we said we were going to do and what we did do. And if it's off, then they're going to want to know why. So just definitely want to just make sure that you are aware that your numbers need to be as accurate as possible when you submit all of your information to us. So again, the overview: when you get your contract, you will not only submit the contract back to us with 2 signatures, so there have to be 2 signatures on each contract, and then you'll also submit to us your Exhibit A. And then also with the understanding that every quarter, especially for public service, well, for every quarter, you'll submit an Exhibit B. Public services will submit a certain Exhibit B, and capital will submit a different Exhibit B, and then minor home repair will submit a slightly different Exhibit B. But everybody will submit some version of an Exhibit B, and then at the end, everybody will submit an Exhibit C as well. Any questions so far? Okay, all right. I'm going to hand it over to Alicia, and she'll go over the payment process.
Okay, so for the payment process, when you submit your request for payment, you must submit the request and backup documentation in Zoom Grants. However, we'll need an original copy of the request for payment form, so that means it has to have a wet signature. You can mail that or drop it off at our office. The request for payment package should also include a summary of expenditures with the request for payment form. The template is posted on the city's website, and I also uploaded a template to Zoom Grants under the invoice section, so you should be able to access that. Time periods of the request should not overlap. If the time period of the request overlap, then the expenses will not be reimbursed. So for example, if you have expenses from January to March, but then your next invoice is February to April, then we won't reimburse you and we'll send the invoice back. Because then that means that we would have to go back and make sure that you didn't bill us twice for certain expenses. Quarterly submissions are preferred but not required. We just recommend that you don't wait until the end of the fiscal year to invoice, and your agency may run the risk of losing its allocation. So if you'd like and you're able to, you could submit your full request for payment in the first or second quarter. And then once you submit your final invoice, then you're done with reporting. So then you don't have to report anymore and you can close out the grant. Just an FYI. A description of items in CDBG budgeted amount column should correspond with those outlined in the contract's Exhibit A. The request for payment form, there's a maximum of 4 requests for payments in the fiscal year, and processing the RFP usually takes about 2 weeks from the time that we receive the request. It just depends on if there's any follow-up or any issues in regards to what was submitted. Here's a copy or an example of what our request for payment form looks like. The number at the top, so if it's your first invoice, you would put 1-2022. The 2022 will always stay the same. It's the first number that will be changed. So it just depends on which invoice it is. Description of items, so highlighted in red, and CDBG budgeted amount. As I mentioned, these 2 columns are based on the proposed budget in the Exhibit A. So if you have salaries, 10,000, then you would put it just as you put it in the Exhibit A. So these won't change unless you request a budget amendment, and then you'll have to update those at that time. But other than that, the budget does not change. Total bill to date. So if it's your first request for payment, that will always equal 0. The second request for payment will include the amounts by line item paid out in the first request for payment and so forth. The green section is the current request for payment. So requested amounts must be supported with summary of expenditures and proper backup documentation. And then just a couple important reminders. You must include the request for payment number. There's a maximum of 4 requests for payments and a minimum $1,000 request, and wet signature is required. And also I changed the Zoom grants requirement to upload a copy of your request for payment form. That just allows us to process it a bit quicker. If you send your original in the mail, we can just go ahead and process it right away. And also just a reminder, you may request your full allocation at any time by submitting the request for payment along with your Exhibit C. So that would be for your final amount. This is just an example of what the summary of expenditures form looks like. And it would just be a breakdown by line item. So salaries, you would put however many employees you're requesting funding for, and then about how much will be billed to this grant. And then same if your next line item was occupancy, then you would just put which months you're paying for and the breakdown of those expenses. Funds can only be used on a reimbursement basis. Payments are not made until after the approved cost is incurred and paid by the subrecipient. So you'll have to show copies of receipts and proof of payment. Errors on invoices or missing documentation will delay the reimbursement. So incorrect or incomplete invoices will be returned for corrections. If the quarterly reports have not been submitted by the deadline, then requests for payments will be held until the reports are submitted, especially with the final request for payment, your payment will be withheld until we receive the Exhibit C statement of accomplishments. And just another reminder that final invoices will be due no later than June 14th, 2023. So supporting documentation for I just put examples of some of the documentation that's required for the line items. So for salaries, it's employee time cards, explaining documentation or providing documentation of the time that's spent on the CDBG related activities. So that includes a description of the activities such as case management, counseling session. And then we'll also need payroll spreadsheets, which will show the employee's wage rate of what they're getting paid. That way we can calculate the expense. For occupancy, we'll need a copy of the lease with terms and then proof of payment. General purchases and assistance invoices should include the eligible expenses. For general purchases, equipment is not allowed, which includes electronics and furnishing. So we'll also need proof of payment for that as well. And for the capital construction projects, we'll need certified payroll along with the bid documents breaking down the expenses. Does anyone have any questions so far regarding supporting documentation or the request for payment form? The next.
Everybody's so quiet.
The next we'll go into subrecipient for salaries. You'll be required to submit subrecipient time and attendance records. So actual work time being charged to CDBG must be documented on this timesheet. You must include only hourly wages and salary. Do not add fringe benefits when you're billing for salaries, except for capital and prevailing wage projects. So description of activity and service provided is required on these time and attendance records, and you cannot charge percentage or prorate. The subrecipients can use if you have a template for your agency in place already, you can use that. Just make sure that it includes a description of that activity that was completed during that time. So next, I'll show you, this is a requirement also if you're billing for salaries, and the form must be included with the invoice as backup documentation. So you would just list how many CDBG hours, their hourly rate, and that'll help you determine the expenses under salaries. And so you must have the payroll documentation for that time period, and it must be documented with the time and attendance record containing the description of the activity and the number of hours worked. The hourly rate, like I said, you need the payroll records, and that will document about how much that they make per hour. And there's also a note that total amount cannot be rounded up to the nearest cent. So just ensure that it's not. And here's an example of our template for the time and activity record. So you can just put your description here, and there's formulas in here so you can update the payroll period. But if you have your own form or you haven't submitted it in the past, you can send it to us and just make sure that it's good before you submit your invoice. But this is our template, and it'll be available on our city's website. Invoicing do's and don'ts. Do plan ahead, ensure that your invoices are submitted in a timely manner. Close out the grant as soon as possible. Like I had said, you can submit for your full amount in the first or second quarter and be done for the fiscal year. Please provide a clear backup documentation. One of our head reps had once said the file must speak for itself. Don'ts for invoicing: do not wait till the last minute to submit an invoice. This could potentially put your funding at risk. And do not bill for ineligible expenses. Like I had mentioned, electronics and furnishings are not eligible. And also, expenses must be incurred during the contract period, which is July 1st, 2022 through June 14th, 2023. Any bills dated prior to July 1st will not be accepted. And audit requirements: any agencies that are responsible for obtaining their audit will be required to submit that to us. I believe we collect that during the monitoring at the end of the year. And the city will audit and review records through an annual monitoring visit by staff. So every year, each agency will have to do a desk monitoring, and then once you submit your desk monitoring checklist, then we'll choose a few agencies based on like a risk analysis, and then we'll the last couple of years it's been virtual monitoring, so we'll usually go out to the site. So we'll just see how this next year will be. CDBG program record keeping. Accurate record keeping is crucial to successful management of CDBG funded activities. Like the previous slide said, the file should speak for itself. No questions asked. So subrecipients must maintain up-to-date files for original source documentation. So all the invoices that you submit, all the reports that you submit, client intake forms and their documentation, if you're keeping that, should all be in one file. Insufficient documentation is likely to lead to monitoring findings, and findings are more difficult to resolve if records are missing, inadequate, or inaccurate. So do not place your CDBG funding status in jeopardy by failing to maintain sufficient and accurate records. Also, your CDBG record shall be retained for at least a period of 5 years from the end of the grant closeout. Timeliness. CDBG subrecipients are required to expend their funds in a timely manner. HUD conducts a timeliness test every year, and any unspent subrecipient funds can place the entire CDBG program into non-compliance. So if you haven't drawn any funding after a certain amount of days, then your activity may be flagged in HUD's reporting system, and then staff is required to explain why those funds haven't been expended. So it's important to draw funds in a timely manner. And Rosie had mentioned our city's website, and it includes all of our subrecipient resources. And it'll be updated before the start of the fiscal year. But this is your kind of one-stop shop to get all your forms and documentation that you need for the fiscal year. And as you see on the screenshot, there's a section that says public service resources. There's also capital project resources and just general resources. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know, either in the chat or raise your hand.
Also, if you have, oh, yes, Vero.
Yes, I just have a quick question. I don't know if this was covered, and maybe I don't know, I didn't listen or hear it, but if we were to bill our, or I guess ask for reimbursement of the full amount early on, either in the second or third quarter, like Alicia said, for the remaining quarters, do we still report our numbers, although we're no longer seeking the fund or receiving funds? Or what would that process look like if we were to spend the funds before the end of the year?
So if you fully expend your funding, say in the second quarter, then you would just have to submit your first and second quarter report, and then also submit your Exhibit C, which is the statement of accomplishments. And then that's it. Then you're done for the fiscal year.
Okay.
I think some agencies just have concerns about them meeting like the goals for the year.
Mhm.
But if you're able to meet your goals, then that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a great question. And I always say, the sooner you get it all in, the sooner you meet your accomplishments, the sooner you can be done with us for the rest of the fiscal year. So you don't have to deal with us anymore. As long as your accomplishments are met, you've drawn down your funds and you've submitted the proper documentation and paperwork, you're good to go. So there's no need to wait till the end of the fiscal year. There's no need to wait to submit anything. If you've got it, send it our way at any time. Do any of the agencies that are on this call have any tips of the tips, tricks, anything that you have found that has been helpful, that you do, anything that you found that is not helpful, anything that you feel can be improved upon? I'd love to hear from you. That's a great, yes, Karen. If you can claim occupancy, that is a very easy way of, so what Karen is saying is that that is one of the easier ways of spending your CDBG funding is by using it towards occupancy. It's, as Karen said, very straightforward. The documentation is there. Salaries, I know it's not always the case that you can claim occupancy, but in some agencies have to do salaries, and that's okay. Salaries just get a little more complicated because you have to submit time and attendance records, you have to submit payroll reports. You have to track the person's hours and what they did for the grant. So it just becomes a little more complicated. It's totally doable. We do it here in our office. We actually have to do a time and attendance for everything we do, believe it or not. So we have to log down what we did every hour for the entire week. So we understand. It's not hard. It's just it can get a little time consuming, especially if you have multiple people doing it. Supplies can get very tricky. Yes, Hector, you're absolutely right. Make sure they are not desks, printers. Yes, as we stated in one of the previous slides, there are certain things that we will not cover, and that includes desks, printers, equipment, and office equipment and electronics.
And one of our head reps had also said, like, how are the supplies benefiting the program administration and the clients? So
that's a really good point. So yeah, when you think about your expenses, think about it in this way. Is it benefiting is it directly benefiting the resident or the person you're serving, or is it benefiting the employee or the person working at the agency? And so some of those things where, you know, it is that item benefiting the person that's receiving the service, or is it more beneficial for the actual employee? And if the answer is it's more beneficial for the actual employee, you might want to rethink that expense under CDBG. Oh, thank you, Karen. Yes, the special projects staff is very prompt and helpful. Alicia and Tash do a I know they're the ones that most of you reach out to directly, and they do a wonderful job of going through everything, explaining everything to you. So you know, it goes without saying, but you know, we're all here to help, but I know Alicia and Tash are, in the front lines when it comes to working with the agencies on all of the reports. So yes, we are very lucky. When in doubt, ask. Definitely ask. We would rather you contact us and contact us early. Do yourselves a favor. We don't care how many times you call us, how many questions you have. We'd rather you ask than not. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? If you think of anything along the way, please send it to us. We're always looking for ways to make this whole process easier on our subrecipients. So we definitely would appreciate any feedback you have as far as things that we can do to help you and ultimately help the residents being served.
And I'll send a follow-up email after the meeting, probably later in the day, but it'll include instructions for the contracts and then a copy of the PowerPoint and hopefully a link to the recording by then. So.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions or comments, we will end this meeting a little early. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for everything every single one of you do for the city of Santa Maria. We really appreciate everything you do. We really enjoy the relationship we have with you, and we are very excited about the continued partnership and all the things that we can do together to help our residents. So thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Rosie, Alicia.
Thank you, Steve.